I have 10 o'clock, and there will be more people still joining here as we get started here. I'm Mike Carlisle, the executive director and I'm from Corpus Christi, and we have 44 people signed up for today's 13th partner event, our 184th partner event. And we're just tickled that all of y'all could be here. Guess we'll just start off here pretty quick with Aubrey Nielsen is going to be talking. She's the collections manager of the Brownsville Historical Association, and she's going to be sharing some information with us about the exhibit called Waterways. And so you want to go ahead, Aubrey?
Hi. Thank you for introducing me. Yes, my name is Aubrey Nielsen, and I'm the collections manager with the Brownsville Historical Association. Just to give you a brief background about Waterways and its program. So the Waterways is a museum on Main Street exhibit sponsored by the Smithsonian. It's part of their outreach program that engages small town communities and audiences. And really what it does is it helps bring exhibits to rural areas that wouldn't normally be able to have access to high quality exhibits. So being that Brownsville is the poorest county in the nation, and our demographics are a little bit different from people around our area, we were able to bring this exhibit here to Brownsville. So we're really excited about that. The MOMS program has been going on since 1994. Presently, they have 5 traveling exhibits that are on rotation. They go through different topics and throughout different cities. The exhibits themselves are sponsored by State Humanities Council. Unfortunately, in the state of Texas, there was a disconnect between the program and the mission of our State Humanities Council. The Brownsville Historical Association in 2018, we discovered this exhibit, and it's not until now 2021 that we were able to host the exhibit, being that our State Humanities Council was not a sponsor of the exhibit coming to Texas. As a result, the University of Texas at El Paso, UTEP, and the Centennial Museum stepped in and became the sponsor, being able to bring it into Texas. We are one of 6 cities throughout the state that will be hosting. It started off in Bryan, Texas, was in Cuero as of 3 weeks ago, and it now is open to the public today here in Brownsville. After here, it will be going to Midland, then Odessa, and ending up in El Paso. And each of these specific cities has their own story to tell about water. So the exhibit itself talks about the way water impacts communities culturally, socially, economically. We think about water as a way which we use it. You know, we drink it, we use it for clothing, but we really want to have an in-depth look at the way that water impacts specific communities. And here in Brownsville, we have 5 different bodies of water, actually, from the Gulf of Mexico. Even though it's not so close to Brownsville, it does impact our community as far as economics and tourism. People generally, when they go to South Padre Island, they will come here to Brownsville and visit to see, of course, the zoo and other historical sites. We also have the Port of Brownsville, which is an economic area for here in Brownsville. It is the largest, at one point, the largest international port, lying on 2 boundaries. We also have something that is really specific to our area, which are called resacas, also known as oxbow bend. So it's part of the Rio Grande that was cut off and then developed into these small little lakes. So very unique to here, Brownsville. The Rio Grande River, of course, dividing 2 countries, and really important culturally, that body of water, as well as Boca Chica Beach. And people know Boca Chica Beach now in the news because of SpaceX. But aside from SpaceX before, it did provide an area for families to go out and have fun, has a lot of history as well. So that's really Brownsville's relation with water, those 5 different bodies of water. And I know that we have a lot of programs. If you guys are interested, they are on our social media and our website. We developed a lineup of programs in association with the exhibit itself. And so we have a series which is called Water Talks. It talks about we have different individuals coming in from across the state to discuss different aspects of water, from its impact, its history here in Brownsville, to hydrology, as well as water in relation to weather. So anything you can think about water, we really kind of honed in on all of its aspects. And then we have some fun things, Sip and Paint, which we will be painting it's a guided class with a local artist to talk about or to show how to paint a resaca themed here in Brownsville. So that will be this Thursday. And we also have which is really exciting, a tour of the Port of Brownsville, which is one of our most interesting, I think, programs. So people will be able to get on a vessel and go through the port, which normally isn't done, and we'll be led by our port commissioner as well as the director. So we're really interested in all of the programs we have lined up. The exhibit is on display at the historic Alonso building here in Brownsville and is open to the public Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 4. And this past Saturday, we hosted our fundraiser, which was a huge success, in my opinion, that really helped bring the exhibit so we were able to have it here in Brownsville.
The Brownsville Historical Association is proud to present Waterways, a traveling exhibition from the Smithsonian Institute's Museum on Main Street program. Waterways features a selection of photographs, objects, film, audio, and interactives to explore the endless motion of the water cycle, water's effect on landscape, settlement and migration, and its impact on culture and spirituality. The exhibition looks at how political and economic planning have been affected by access to water and control of water resources. Designed for small-town museums, libraries, and cultural institutions, Waterways will serve as a community catalyst to spur conversations about water's impact on American culture. The exhibition will travel to 6 sites across the state of Texas over a 1-year period.
The Brownsville Historical Association will be the only organization to be receiving the Smithsonian Traveling Exhibit in Deep South Texas. The exhibit will be on display September 21st through November the 6th at the historic Alonso building. Since 2018, the Brownsville Historical Association has been anxiously awaiting the arrival of the Waterways exhibit from the Smithsonian. I really view this exhibit as a launching pad for larger, expansive, and creative thinking exhibitions.
The BHA has developed public programs to deepen people's understanding of what water means, such as our Water Talk speaker series. This series serves as a way to educate and engage students, faculty, and parents about the importance of water in our region. The speakers scheduled to talk have a diverse background that will help explore the water's effect on landscape, settlement, access to water, and control of water resources. All programs will be hosted at the historic Alonso building located at 510 East St. Charles Street in Brownsville, unless otherwise noted. For more information about other programs and events, please follow us on our social media platforms.
In an effort to create a local connection to the exhibition, we invited local artist Rebecca Arguelles to develop an artistic connection to the exhibit. She installed Pillar of Corals, a mixed media art installation which was created using recycled materials like old bed sheets, plastic bottles, packaging peanuts, egg cartons, and old curtains. The idea is to resemble an aquatic atmosphere by creating a high-relief surface with organic shapes and textures using the recycled materials. The skylight in the building during the daytime helps create the idea of underwater lighting and enhances the shadows casted by the materials, highlighting the different textures. For more information about Waterways, please visit www.brownsvillehistory.org. A special thanks to our Waterways sponsors: HEB, Brownsville Convention and Visitors Bureau, Brownsville Public Utilities Board, the Port of Brownsville, Wells Fargo Advisors, Rudy De La Garza, Frost Bank, L&F Distributors, Dick's Industries, McNair and Company, Bingo, Brisky and Pettis Insurance, Dr. Anthony Knopp, Via Dental Center, Tip of Texas Insurance, Plitt Crane and Equipment, Inc., United Healthcare, and Texas Regional Bank.
And thank you, Aubrey. Look great, that video, and thank you for sharing all that great information. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Aubrey, could you tell us the dates again of that exhibit?
Yes, so the exhibit runs from September 21st. It opens today through November the 6th.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Can you please tell us more about the trip down the Brownsville port?
Yes, so the port tour will be on November the 4th. And in order to get on this, the vessel, we have two different programs set up. We have limited space. The vessel itself will carry 60 people, and 30 of which will be open to the general public. 15 seats will go to members, so it's a first come, first served basis. If you are a member, you can call in and reserve your spot. And then the other 15 are going to individuals who complete our passport program, which we developed to go along with our line of events. So we have this little passport, and we'll stamp if you attend 3 or more of the events, you get entered into a raffle in order to be able to go on to the actual trip itself. We found that it would be easier, and instead of having, telling certain people who can come in and who cannot, and it gets people to come out and join all of our programs as well. So we'll start off in the basin of the port, and from there we'll travel up through the channel. We won't go all the way into the Gulf itself, but we will go through it. And during the tour, we'll get the history of the port from its initial phases of dredging and how it kind of started to develop, and then it'll go up until today and how it came to be the port and an international port. And so it's really exciting because a lot of people locally and not from our area, they don't know the impact the port has had here in Brownsville. And Tara and I actually were able to go out a few weeks ago and have a tour with the director on the ground facilities, and we learned about different individuals who do international shipping and bring in imports and exports and how it's changed throughout its history. So as a participant, you will be able to learn about that and its significance to Brownsville's industries as well.
Thank you. It sounds wonderfully interesting.
Thank you.
So I had a question, actually. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I work with the Historical Commission. I actually used to run the Museum on Main Street program for the Illinois Humanities Council. So I'm super familiar with this, love this program. It was so great. It was such a great experience. But I know that volunteer engagement is a huge part of the process because, it takes so many hands. I saw that you had some volunteers there helping put together the exhibit. And so I'm just wondering what engagement has been like in the area.
We've had a lot of positive feedback from us bringing it in. So we really were trying to rowdy the crowd, say, this is the first time a Smithsonian quality exhibit or the Smithsonian is coming to Brownsville. That's really what our slogan was. Individuals have been really interested in participating. So I know that we had the setup, and we have a group of interns that were here assisting us during its setup for our fundraiser. We received a lot of positive feedback. Our local artist who did the installation, it was all in kind, and she did it, just to help support the museum, and it's something different. So in terms of volunteering, we've not had anybody say no. Everybody really wants to be a part of it because it's such a big name. A name like the Smithsonian isn't something that you hear quite often in our area, and so any way that they can help, they've been really interested. One of our board members, who is also a local artist, donated a piece to be sold at our institution, and the proceeds will come back fully to the museum, just a way to help. So it has been very interesting to see this transition, but for the last couple of years we haven't really done traveling exhibits, and now that we have this here, a lot of people really want to join and participate in whatever it is that we have doing.
Great, thank you.
I also did want to mention all of this information will be on our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook. We also have a series coming up that will just be on social media called Splash Facts. And it'll be very fast facts about water and importance here in Brownsville and other important facts about water. So if you have a chance to check those out, they'll be coming out once a week on our social media. And we hope that you guys can share and visit at some point.
Well, thank you very much again for such a great program, and I hope everyone gets a chance to go to Waterways. And so let's move on to our next part of our program. It's going to be with Lynn Allison. She's the Public Information Manager for the Harbor Bridge Replacement Project, and we look forward to hearing her presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Well, I appreciate you all inviting me to join today. I have to say I'm sad to not be there in person, as I have such fond memories of being at the Museum of Science and History, going there as in field trips when I was a kid, and then taking my own children there. So a shout out to Miss Carol on such a wonderful institute, and sad to not be there in person. Are you able to pull up my presentation?
I sure can. I got
Okay.
it right here.
Thank you. Please forgive me, everyone. I'm going to talk quickly. Most of my presentations take about 30 minutes with the questions and answers. So I'm going to speed through this and I'm going to walk through about 16 slides here and allow for some of your questions. So while Mike is pulling that up, as you mentioned, I am the Public Information Coordinator for the Harbor Bridge Project. Many people think this project is just about building the bridge over the ship channel, and the bridge itself is about 25% of the project, certainly a focal point, but it's a tremendous amount of roadworks and highway reconstruction involved in this state project. So please advance to the next slide. So I have an agenda here. Quickly, we'll cover, we have different sections of this project. Like I said, the bridge itself is just a part of it. So we'll talk about the construction project progress of our roadworks, the north approach, the south approach, our precast yard in Robstown, the backspan piers, which come off of the main bridge span, the cable stay bridge itself and the towers, environmental compliance, workforce safety and project safety, or workforce development and project safety, and a recent award that we received for the project. So if you'll advance the slide, please. I'm not sure how many of you folks are from Corpus or this area, but this is an overview of the existing connectors that were coming together at the south interchange around IH-37 and State Highway 286. As of August of this year, last month, we began, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here, but we began demolishing connector A, B, and D in order to build these new connectors that you'll see in the next slide, please. So here's an overview of how this interchange will come together. This is 181 down the middle that ties into State Highway 286. And of course, this here is Crosstown Extension, IH-37, and then the Leopard Street corridor kind of in the bottom right, which will go up and over Crosstown. So in this year, we are planning to open these two connectors on the bottom, which will both connect northbound and southbound IH-37 and State Highway 286. Just last month, we opened this new this new northwest loop ramp is what we connected, which connects US 181 and will connect the Bayfront to the south side, or State Highway 286. So if you'll advance the slide, please. So for those two previous slides, in order to get from the first slide with the existing connectors to the new slide with the new connectors, we have to do a lot of demolition and a tremendous amount of road work. So please note the complexity of what you see in this photograph. And this is a photograph from just a couple of weeks ago. So this is advanced even a lot further. But you can really see how this is coming to take shape around the interchange and why we have had to do so many traffic control changes and movements with rerouting traffic. It's no small task to keep traffic moving while all this construction is underway and demolition is underway. And it is sort of a little bit of a headache because we all have to travel through this, and my office is right in the heart of this, right near this loop ramp. So I'm familiar with the headaches of construction. Like I said, this is a recent view of the work that we have going on. We've also shifted some of our roadworks. While this is ongoing, we are also now working on the North Beach side of the project, which I'll get into in just a minute. But back to that Leopard Street corridor, that's going to open up next year, and that's going to be another free-flowing connectivity to sort of connect to the uptown area and the more northwest area over here on this side, Leopard Street area. And this will ultimately be the interchange tie-in for US 181, 37, and State Highway 286. And with all our road works, there's a lot of structural work going on. So we have constant seismic monitoring to make sure there's baseline measurements and that we're not impacting, for instance, on the north side, the aquarium or any businesses in the area. So we're constantly having to monitor the area, and not only with seismic monitoring, but environmental impacts, which we'll get into. So next slide, please. So we jump across the ship channel and get into the north approach area. And like I said, we're back working on these roadworks over here. So we have to begin demolishing this bridge over 181, and will be the future connection. 181 will tie in to this new approach ramp here, where you can see at the bottom of the picture. So we've started back on roadworks in this area to begin ground preparation. We're going to do some lane shifts on US 181 in order to begin work on these last remaining 8 spans of the north approach. And those on the north approach, we had a significant milestone late last summer into last fall, where we moved that giant launching gantry crane over to the south side of the project, which I'll show you some pictures in a second. But the launching gantry crane erected all of these spans, which you can see are like a runway of this north approach. And I like this picture because it really captures how much bigger this bridge is going to be and how much longer the approach is on either side without any dangerous curves. Again, the clearance is, in case you didn't know, will be about 70 feet higher for navigational traveling ships. And again, we eliminate a lot of the danger with a less steep incline and lower curves on and off. So like I said, these last remaining 8 spans will be used with a false work erection method, which is unlike erecting the segments that we did with the gantry crane. It's like using heavy scaffolding to erect these last few spans. And we work in partnership with the aquarium and the attractions on North Beach. I work closely with our roadworks department to make sure we're providing ample signage, because there are route changes, and unfortunately Google Maps or Apple Maps, if you're traveling the area, it doesn't always pick up those changes. So we try to provide ample construction signage to allow for motorists to find these attractions. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So here's the other side of the project. This is where the south approach this is the embankment wall, the lower area of the south approach, which will be where 181 comes up to 286. You can see 2 of those direct connectors taking shape. In this photo, you can actually see 10 lanes of traffic that will converge, including 6 northbound and westbound main lanes and 2 shoulders. And up here, you can see this curve will be the shared use path, which will also be 10 foot wide, protected for both cyclists and foot traffic alike. I also want to point out in this photo, a significant amount of the work in the Harbor Bridge project includes improved drainage and utility work, which relates to, we have tripled the capacity of this salt flat channel here, which will be ultimately will tie in up around Messina Street and Leopard Street around 286 to help relieve some of that historical flooding in that low-lying area. So this will be a tremendous canal that will help alleviate some of the traffic and the water backlog whenever we have big storm events. Want to point out in this project, like I said, it's obviously all about the cable stay and the main span, but there's 21 total bridges in this project. In this photo, I think you can see 7 or 8 of those several bridges. We've got 2 box culvert bridges going over this waterway. We have 2 connector bridges. Of course, this is the South Approach Bridge, the shared use path, and the actual main span itself. Let me just make sure I've captured. So with the north, back to the north approach side, this upper deck here where these spans are, that's considered the superstructure. So on the north approach side, the other previous slide, we're 90% complete with that superstructure. And on this side of the channel, we're about just under 40% complete, as in we've completed about 21 of 57 spans to be erected. So this is referred to as the superstructure, the upper layer deck, and then the columns refer to the substructure. So if you'll advance the slide, we can look at that a little further. So you can see here how the gantry crane, this also runs along the salt flat channel. These towers and these columns are considered substructure. So the substructure on the south approach side is just about 80% complete. And the superstructure, like I said, is about just under 40% complete. Moving this launching gantry crane was no small task. It took multiple self-propelled modular vehicles, much traffic control to relocate this. It took about 3 weeks to relocate this gantry crane piece by piece and reassemble it. Also, what's unique about this photo is we are currently working over the UPRR, which are the railroad tracks, and alongside a wetland. So there's tremendous amount of environmental compliance and regulatory compliance prior to mobilizing to even work in this area. So there's extreme monitoring at all times in this area. I want to point out that this launching gantry crane weighs about 1,800 tons and set a record on this project for erecting a 207-foot span, which to our best of our research, we believe is the longest span in the world erected by a launching gantry crane. We have 10 spans altogether on the south approach side of the project that are over 200 feet long. And most of the spans are about 190 feet long. Each one of these spans has 18 to 19 of these segments that are sitting on the ground. We'll get into looking at that in just a minute of the precast yard. Let me just make sure I've caught all my notes here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So sort of the heartbeat of the approach bridge and the main span takes place out at our precast yard in Robstown. You can see with this man standing here on this concrete segment that just how large these segments are. We utilize for these segments that go into the superstructure of the bridge, a 170-year platinum grade concrete mix that who would ever imagine something lasting 170 years. But there are that many elements of quality in the products going into building this bridge. In Robstown this past spring, we completed a major milestone in that we finished casting all of the 1,869 approach segments, and so far 1,100 of those approach segments have been moved to the north and south approach. Again, much traffic control is in place just to move one of these segments, which weigh up to 120 tons each, and they all are transported on their own 18-wheeler. Let me see. And these segments are again 14 feet tall, and depending on if they're the northbound or southbound lanes, they are from 59 to 69 feet wide. Go on to the next slide, please. We've just resumed, back to that slide, please, if you don't mind. So touching on the timeline of the cable stay bridge, I'll get a little bit ahead of myself. If you'll just jump back to Robstown, to precast yard, please, Michael. We have just resumed construction of our main span segments, which is great news for the project. Back in Robstown, like I said, they finished erecting all and constructing all of the approach segments. So now they're back resuming main span segment construction as of August, and also the delta frames for those main span segments. And then with the next slide, go on. So I'm leading up into, with this slide work, back, like I said, on the towers for the main span. We are now working on these back span piers, which on the right side, you can see the north side of the project have completed these back span piers, which will tie into the cable stay towers. We've just started work on the south, on the left picture, the south piers for the backspan pier. The foundation and footings are complete, and we've just poured on the right side of the left photo the first column lift for the backspan piers. So what's unique about these backspan pier columns, which is different from the other substructure approach columns, is that they tie into, and you can see in this lower photo, how they tie into the and support the transition piers of the main span. So that's more progress, and people will ask, what's the timeline, or when are we going to see work going on over the ship channel? Well, this work going on now is associated with that work that will ultimately go over the ship channel. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So here we have our north and south tower. On the left is our north tower and our south tower on the right. I know everyone wants to ask, what is the timeline for completion? We haven't finalized release of that timeline. We are still reviewing the final design submittals or the reevaluation of the new engineer of record that came in to reevaluate the design of the main span. That's nearing completion, so we expect to have a timeline for completion. So the timeline for the timeline should be this fall. The good news is we are working on these towers. They are structurally sound. We resumed in August, and we have rapidly worked to where both towers are now caught up and about at the same pace. Construction of lift 12 is underway on both of these towers, which is unique in that lift 12 will be the last substructure or lower tower, and it creates the table to begin tying in the superstructure or upper towers of these bridge. And you can hardly see in these photos, but there's actually skidoo cans placed all around these towers, and that's always a good sign of construction when there's portable restrooms up there. The kids tend to like it when I say that, at least. So back to these towers, you'll see now a lot of activity there. Much of our concrete pouring is done at night, just with more temperature control of our concrete, so even more activity at night. Let's see, let's go on to the next slide. I know I'm running out of time here. Just want to touch on our environmental quality and our assurance. This entire project is environmentally sensitive, and that there's so much compliance in place to do with these drainage. There's on the left side of this photo, there's these rock filter dams placed, limiting sedimentation throughout the salt flat channel on the south side of the project, and the Rincon channel that sort of runs alongside the north approach on the north beach area. And these sedimentation rock filter dams prevent any waste filtering down into the waterways. You can see in the middle, we've had a wetland mitigation where we've done a huge area of about 6 acres of grass replanting, involving just grading and clearing old concrete and replanting native wetland grasses. On the right photo, you can see that particularly in the spring, which we've now just wrapped up all the nesting season, but even with the shorebirds, we have to watch and work around these nesting birds. If we have one dove lay eggs in one of our cranes, we literally have to shut down that area and work around it. That's how strict our environmental compliance is. Our environmental team have literally trained over 4,500 staff, and they are constantly ensuring our permits around the railroad tracks with our tower cranes and FAA regulations, and keeping us in compliance with our stormwater prevention plan. And liaising with the state on all matters related to environment. The next slide. Just want to touch on our workforce training float program. We kind of received some negative headlines about this time last year where we had to do some layoffs. And the good news is we've been ramping up our workforce. We've got about 100 new trainees or rehires back in place. Back last year, we were able to relocate several of our crews to other projects that the developer has around the country. And so now we're back with our workforce, really amped up project-wide, from the precast yard to roadworks to approach and tower construction. Each one of these training programs, so far we've trained over 41 new hires in an intensive on-the-job training program where they receive anywhere from 320 to 1,040 hours of training, which really helps build their own resumes for future projects. And then just to touch on our safety mitigation, like everyone, COVID has been a huge impact on the project, and working through this pandemic, it's pretty impressive how we've managed to keep everyone safe. And unfortunately for our guys out in the field, we all are still wearing masks. Safety for our commuters is a top priority. We have extreme training before anyone is allowed on the job site, in that we are, everyone has to have their PPE gear and be escorted by one of our safety supervisors. So we really do take not just safety for our workforce, but for the traveling public into consideration at all times. And with the next slide, I just want to touch on something we're really proud of, to have just received this Invest Platinum Award, which stands for Infrastructure Voluntary Evaluation Sustainability Tools. And it has to do with a lot of recycling on the project, where we take asphalt and concrete and construction debris and we repurpose it on the project. We crush that into making, sub base for roadways, and then the new lighting system. And this, by the way, the new bridge has been reevaluated, but the existing design that you've all seen has not changed from an untrained eye. So you can still look forward to having this phenomenal lighting display and lighting show of this new bridge with the same design, aesthetic design. And back to the Invest program, the award was allocated because of our environmental compliance, because of our social initiatives where we do these events like this, and outreach to the public and a lot of school events, and just overall compliance with the recycling and trying to control any additional waste on the project. So with that, I know I spoke so quickly. One thing I didn't address in this, but I know you all are basically a historically related group, and a lot of the questions I get have to do with what's going to happen with the bridge when it comes down. Well, to some degree, that really depends on the subcontractor and how that contract works out, because there will be a tremendous amount of recycling involved. And thankfully, we have these groups like Steel Dynamics, which will be a part of that coming into the coastal bend. I often get questions if we're going to use any of the steel structure to create an offshore reef or repurpose for art. And again, we're definitely in those conversations and exploring that with the contractor who will come in and do the demolition. But it also, again, has to do with a lot of environmental testing and how that material will work with the saltwater and safety concerns for the environment and for any pedestrians down the road. So with that, my last slide is just more about answering any questions.
Well, thank you so much for that great presentation. And like she says, does anybody have any questions she wants to add? Well, Carol Whitmire, the president and CEO of the Corpus Christi Museum of Science and History, had planned to welcome us to the museum today, but we had to go virtual, and she sent me a virtual tour of the museum and science to share.
I get to take care of all of the things that the museum owns and takes care of on behalf of other people.
We're just taking a little time during the closure to step inside one of our large coastal bird dioramas and give their eyeballs a little bit of a cleaning.
So they just get like a grainy layer on them.
They're glass usually, eyeballs within the taxidermy. You can just clean off with a little bit of distilled water and a Q-tip. It's a simple process that it brightens them up and it makes them look a little more lifelike. Sea creatures, so we're going to be doing some research, getting enough maps to really demonstrate. We didn't get big dinosaurs here because for most of geologic time we've been at or underwater. So a lot of that dinosaur stuff has to come from further north Texas. We get, you know, the seashells and that sort of thing.
It's all kind of crazy. We got a lot of history down these pots. Yeah, we take all those pieces and
wouldn't believe it. It's called the washing machine. Y'all believe that? You just lift open the lid like that, pour in your water, you sprinkle in your powdered soap, toss in your dirty old clothes, close it on up, get this crank going back and forth just like this. You got fresh laundry in just 1 short hour.
Wow. Oh my God.
A little time saver out here. That sure beats the old washboard, that's for sure. Oh, perfect. Yeah, y'all know how this works. So just take open the lid, pour the cream in there, close it up really good, just churn away like this.
We explore. We dream. We use our imagination. We experience the magic. It's all about seeing the world with your own eyes.
3, 2, 1. Very nice, Professor. Everything's getting ready. Does that hurt?
And where does Superman get around when he's in major metropolitan areas? Why, he jumps on the power line and runs across the power lines, and that's how Superman gets around.
We're going to move on to our last program. That's going to be with Susan Trevino and Renee of Enjoy Corpus Christi Tours. And she's a fellow Nueces County Historical Commissioner. And she's going to share a great story about the Dragon Grill and the Corpus Christi history. And we're pleased to announce that Susan Trevino submitted her proposal to participate in the Real Places Conference scheduled for February 2022. So, Susan?
Thank you, Mike. Okay. All right. Mike, you're going to do my notes on the screen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about a very prominent and infamous Corpus Christi businessman and a landmark court case. My research was based on the work of several local historians, and I want to acknowledge the photos of Doc McGregor, which are housed at the Corpus Christi Museum of Science and History. The Dragon Grill existed in Corpus Christi from 1930 until 1954, and it was owned by Lynn Keyes Mason. But as an adult, Lynn was known as Doc. Lynn was born in 1902 in Pennsylvania. His family moved to Texas to Port Arthur, where his father worked at the Gulf Refinery. When Lynn completed his 9th grade year in school, he joined his father at Gulf Refinery, and he worked at the refinery's laboratory. When Lynn turned 21, he worked on a tanker at sea for about a year and eventually ended up in West Texas. He didn't really like the sea life. In West Texas, he got his first experience at being a bootlegger. And by 1926, he was in Corpus Christi. Now, one of my favorite stories about Doc is that he had a bad eye and he had a bad leg. He lost one of his legs from the knee down. Now, this is a really confusing story. We don't know if his sister accidentally, while cleaning a gun, fired the weapon that shattered his leg, or if his first wife purposely fired the weapon that shattered his leg because she had found out he was with another woman. Kind of confusing, but we never did find out about what happened with the eye. Now, Mike, I'm noticing the screen's not up.
It should be. Hold on just a second. Let me make sure. Let me see what I've got going on here.
Okay, because I did want to see the first photograph. This photograph is actually from 1940. Doc actually founded the first Dragon Grill in 1930. And he also, and the first Dragon Grill was operated on North Beach. He also operated the Oasis Dinner Club, which was also on North Beach. Well, parking at the first Dragon Grill became a problem. So Doc turned his attention to the Oasis. And that was the only dinner club that he operated on North Beach. In 1938, he remodeled the Oasis, and we can advance to the next photo, Mike. And he renamed the Oasis the Dragon Grill. So this was the second Dragon Grill on North Beach. It was the most posh nightclub in Corpus Christi. The patrons danced to big band luminaries. They ate the best steaks. They consumed a lot of liquor, and there was gambling on the second floor. Advance, please. This is a night photo of the second Dragon Grill. The second Dragon Grill was raided a couple of times. Doc never spent a night in jail, however. And in January of 1944, there was a fire in the kitchen. But that wasn't going to deter Doc. He said, you know what? I think I'll just move to the other side of the bridge and work. Now, what does the Vietnam restaurant have to do with this story? Advance, please. Well, Doc leased the Elks Lodge. The Elks Lodge was what we now know as the Vietnam restaurant. And that's a photo that was taken in the 1940s. But of course, there's more to this story. The man who leased the Elks Lodge to Doc was a fellow by the name of Bush Jackson. Jackson had to break the lease that was already held by Joe Mays, who operated the Playboy Club at the Elks building. Now, this simple landlord-tenant dispute had to be taken to court, and in 1945, it was tried in front of County Judge Joe Browning. Now, I should tell you that Judge Browning had no legal training. By the time the case got to Judge Browning, Joe had been drafted and was stationed at Fort Hood, and his wife was operating the Playboy Club. You can advance it, Mike, please. Now, during the trial, there were bitter exchanges between the lawyers. We can go ahead and advance. And when the jury was ready to make a determination on this particular simple landlord-tenant dispute, Judge Browning said, I want you to find in favor of Bush Jackson. Well, the 6-man jury went out, discussed it, came back, and found in favor of Mays, the soldier, the owner of the Playboy Club. The judge said, I told you I wanted you to find in favor of Jackson. Go back and deliberate. Do what I'm telling you. The jury went back and again came back in favor of the soldier. Well, that really infuriated the judge, so he locked the jury in the jury room overnight. And the next day, he threatened to lock them up again if they did not find in favor of Jackson. Well, the jury deliberated for several more hours and found in favor of Jackson as the judge had instructed, against the conscience of the jury. Next slide. Now, that's not where this all ended. Enter Bob McCracken. Now, Bob McCracken, some of y'all may recognize that name, was the managing editor and columnist for the Corpus Christi Caller-Times. And he wrote a little article. Let me quote from that. People don't like the idea of such goings on, especially when a man in the service of his country seems to be getting a raw deal. That was the travesty of justice. The judge's refusal to hear both sides. That's where a legal background would have served him in good stead. It's no wonder the jury balked and public opinion is outraged. Well, the judge was incensed and he cited Bob McCracken and 2 other staff members for the Caller-Times, the publisher and a reporter, of contempt of court. He ordered the 3 men held in the county jail. We can advance and continue to advance. The 3 men were turned over to Sheriff Harney, booked, fingerprinted, and mugshots taken. Then the 3 men were taken down to the jail kitchen for some coffee and huevos rancheros. Finally, after about 5 hours, the 3 were released on a writ of habeas corpus. Now, you know, that could not possibly be the end of this contempt of court case. We can advance. The contempt of court case ended up with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld Judge Browning's ruling. That still was not the end of it. We can advance. The contempt of court case ended up in 1947 in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court actually reversed the findings of Judge Browning and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in a 6-3 opinion. The salient points of the opinion noted that a trial is a public event, that what happens in a courtroom is public property, that a judge cannot use the power of his office to protect himself from criticism, even if that is unfair criticism. Now let's recap. The Caller-Times won the case, but they owed $36,000 in legal fees. Joe Mays never got a new trial. He lost his lease. Doc Mason got the Elks Club building for his Dragon Grill. Judge Browning never served another term, and we now have a landmark Supreme Court case. Next slide, please. Doc spent $260,000 on renovations for his Dragon Grill. Next slide. And it was an amazing, amazing facility. It opened in March of 1946. The first floor was occupied by the Zodiac Room, and this would have been the room where families and organizations would have dined and had their meetings. One of the amazing things in the Zodiac Room were the floor-to-ceiling quadrimurals, which depicted the courtship and marriage of a Swedish couple. Next slide, please. The second floor was the living quarters for the Chinese cooks. There were private rooms for high-stake gamblers, and Doc's office was located on the second floor. Next slide. On the third floor, That's where the action was. That's the Jalner room. It was an elegant supper club and a gaming room. There was a beautiful orchestra stand and a crescent-shaped bar. Access to the Jalner room and gaming tables was controlled with warning lights and buzzards from the first floor. There were secret panels, movable walls, a maze of sliding panels, hidden rooms, and secret exits. Next slide. The Dragon Grill's reputation was one of the top nightclubs in the country. Next slide. The food was impeccable. Maine lobster on ice, prime steaks from Chicago were served by the head chef, Joe Ming. Next slide. There were no strong arm tactics at the Dragon Grill. If you didn't have a tie, that was no problem. They would get a tie for you. Next slide. The guests danced to big band luminaries, but the allure was the illegality. Now, enter another character, Raymond Lapel. He was a mystery man from out of town. He frequented the Dragon Grill, the first floor, and he dated many of the local young women in order to gain trust of the doorman, Pop Powers. Now, he and his dates were dressed to kill, and in August of 1953, Raymond was able to convince Pop Powers to let him go upstairs to the Jalna room. Raymond watched as the gamblers threw down their chips. When it was his turn, Raymond put his badge down. This raid killed the Dragon Room. You see, Raymond was an out-of-town policeman. Doc was charged with keeping a gambling house. However, the grand jury returned a no bill in the case. In 1954, Doc was forced to sell out to the town club. He moved to Las Vegas and died in 1985. So that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. Thanks, Mike, for putting my notes up on the board.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties there. Yeah,
That's okay.
Appreciate your time and sharing that great and wonderful story. Does anybody have any questions? Well, if no one has any questions, again, thank you.
I do, Mike.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, this is Pat Rousseau, and I lived in Corpus Christi for 20 years before moving to Rockport, and I'd often heard about the Dragon Club, but never such an exciting story. But are there pictures of the interior from that time frame? Do you know?
I have never seen pictures, and of course I've gone to the Vietnam restaurant and spoken with the current owners, and they say basically that all of that, as we know, has all been covered over. So I would love to see pictures of that.
Yeah, that was great though, Susan. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, again, thank you, Susan. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Valerie, our board chair, and take it away, Valerie.
I had to step out for a minute, so I missed at the very top of the meeting. I apologize for that. Mike, thanks for putting this program together. As you all might have known, if you're following us very closely at all, we intended for this to be our first in-person partner event, and it just didn't turn out that way. So here we are today. We appreciate you all for hanging in there with us through these trying times. It wasn't easy to pivot once again and go back to virtual. We're just going to be doing this for months and months, trying to figure out what is going to be best for public safety, ours and all the sites that host us. This isn't the best, but it's the best we can do right now. So we really appreciate your support. I love the synergy between the first two programs that happened today with waterways and highways, and presenting here today at a trail meeting. Without those waterways and highways, we wouldn't be able to get from place to place to see all these things that we see virtually or in person. So I thought that was just a bit ironic. You know, you may kind of wonder, well, how does a bridge story fit in this programming? But that's how it does. That's how we get to those museums and other historic sites. This was our 13th virtual partner event. There may be a 14th, we don't know. We're going to see what number 14 looks like, and everybody has to just be flexible. So over the 13, we've had over 700 participants. We really appreciate that, and want you all to know that it's part of our conversation with the Texas Historical Commission, and Commissioner Burdette can verify that when we go to make public comments, we want to let them know what we're doing and how we're trying to service the historic preservation community. But you know, without your stories, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. So the next meeting coming up, the date of that, Mike, is, I don't know off the top of my head. Stay tuned, and we will be working on whether or not we can be there in person. December's event will be a little bit different too, in that we're going to be discussing moving that a week forward, which we have done in the past because it is so close to Christmas otherwise. And we have some new board members with us today. And of course, Sandy Jumper had to leave at 10:30. She's a new board member. We're happy to have her on board. And Chris Mayer from the King Ranch, and Tara Putnat from the Brownsville Historical Association. And we're so excited about the ideas that they're going to bring to the table that we would not have been able to think of without their involvement. So no pressure.
Our next meeting will be October 19th.
October 19th. So we will we'll see you October 19th, either on a computer screen or in real life. Either way, it'll be the best we can make it. Thank you all for joining us today for our 13th virtual partner event.
Thank you, Valerie. And with that concludes our program for today. We're going to be moving into our board meeting after this. And so I just want to thank, like Valerie said, I want to thank everybody for being flexible, and especially our presenters to be able to switch to virtual and with a short notice, and we really appreciate that. And we'll keep you informed about what we're going to do for the upcoming meetings. And thank you for joining us.